Basically, it's just solid organizational techniques. Another key thing that we need to do is build a scouting report. We need to create a visual for our players and what they're going to expect. These scouting reports are all done by myself, and I use Microsoft Excel. I know a lot of you guys out there have Playmakers and other sophisticated tools for draw, but I find this easy for me to use, and if you don't have anything special, you can use it. Every one of the opponent's kickoff coverage, and other special teams are listed, and we go through them at our Monday night meeting. At our Monday night meeting, once we get through with this paperwork, which they keep, then they actually see the team executing this on special teams cut-ups. I prefer visual rather than paper, but some of our players, because they have various learning styles, like to learn it in different ways. We're now going to talk about the in-season practice schedule. Before, I talked about keeping consistent, and you're going to notice again with our blocks of planning time in our practice schedule, they are identical. We're going to still have 3 segments, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and then 25 minutes, where we will execute in that 25 minutes more of our group and team stuff that we do. However, I want you to focus on the top line moving across. On Monday, in the afternoon, we have 20 minutes with the players to review game film of the previous opponent. How did we do? Most of the time, I use cut-ups, and I grade my players, and that gets posted on the bulletin board. I don't give the players scores. I give the players tips on improvement or what they need to look at when they watch the film. Anything that they have done well is going to be in blue, and anything they have done poorly is going to be listed in red. Then in the evening, as I mentioned before, we will have a 30-minute meeting on Monday nights to go over the opponent's scouting report and also watching game video of them in action. I'm going to jump over to Friday during our Friday practice plan. On Friday, we take 20 minutes, and during that time, we review, just by calling out, all of the units on special teams in the order in which they would appear with the offense and defense. For example, we would call out our defensive unit, then we would call out our third down defensive unit, and then we might say punt pressure, punt block. And then the punt block unit will step out. We will go through the entire process of calling maybe our first down defensive team, then third down, maybe changing it to a nickel kind of situation, and then we'll call out punt return. And the punt return personnel will come out. It's also on Friday where we practice 3 other things. We practice onside, kick, hands team, and hurry up field goal, which comes right at the end of our 2-minute drill in order to get players to understand that they need to be ready, run out on the field, and get ready in a short period of time to kick the winning field goal. Our individual time for practices, as I said, remain the same, and they will be for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. To give you an idea, Tuesday, our progression generally is the first 10 minutes, punt return or punt block. We establish maybe the player's assignments because that is the one that changes most drastically week to week. Everything else of our schemes stays pretty much solid with what we're going to do with very little modification. So we need a little extra time on punt pressure, and we take those 10 minutes, whether it's drilling or just alignments or just go right into team if we've done it in the past. Then comes our Tuesday specialist period, which I'm going to show you what we do on Tuesdays to maximize the practice schedule. And then we're going to take a look at our 25 component/team period. And there on Tuesdays, we generally do our individual drills and team drills for our punting unit. On Wednesday, the first 10 minutes is generally delegated to kickoff coverage, where we will do drills and also work on our various schemes that you would see in the kickoff coverage tape. Our 10 minutes of specialists would still be the specialists, but we do different things during that time. And then for the last 25 minutes, the offense and defensive linemen, along with the rest of the extra point and field goal teams, will now do live field goal protection. Immediately following that, we do 15 minutes of kickoff return. Could be group drills, then followed by a couple reps of team. That's usually done in a controlled live period. Of course, do not take the returners down to the ground, but trying to get their hands or make a form tackle on the returners. Thursday's practice, we go back and revisit, as if we need it, most of the time we do, our punt pressure for the first 10 minutes. Our specialist period is the same, but we change the drills within it, and you'll see that in a second. And then on Thursday, right after, or when we actually get to our practice plan for the team period, we do a game script. And I'm going to show you what that entails when we get to that slide. Once again, players need to know where they're going and what we're doing. Right here, you would see a typical practice schedule for the special teams at Montclair State. You can see how it's broken down into the practice times, 10, and in this particular case, this week it was 20 because it was near the end of the season. I didn't have that many players, and this was the final game of the year. Normally it's 25. We were just trying to lessen the load on all the players and cutting practice back because as you get near the end of the year, you get a little leg weary. You can see it's broken down Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you can also see what we did within those segments. Again, you can study these charts at your leisure, but you'll notice they're very congruent to what I just established as what we do on what given day in the time periods that I mentioned. Just like we saw in preseason practice, our kickers also have a routine. In this particular case, this routine stays pretty much the same during in-season, week in and week out. What I'd like you to particularly note that before our kickers go to work, kickers and punters, they do a warm-up and they do their individual drills. If you remember, I talked about the 20 minutes prior to the first special teams segment that we are going through our defense and offensive walkthroughs or blitzes or whatever new line schemes that we have for that week. They are actually warming up. Most of my punters and kickers come out even before practice and they do some stretching and some of their favorite drills, and not only just the drills that I ask them to do. If you notice, before they leave the field, they must warm down. They go through a complete stretching, and they do that with one of our assistant trainers. And I check in with them to make sure that they have done that. Then the next situation is we get into our practice plan, as I mentioned. But there will be times when we're doing something offensively and defensively that the kickers are not going to be involved in. If they feel that they need to work on certain things, then that is a good time for them to work on it. But for the most part, they need to work on cuff and corner, or the corner kick, and pooch kicks. That's something that we normally don't do in our 10-minute specialist period. And then, of course, our kickoff personnel might want to work a little bit more on their directional punting, or also some drive kicks, or sometimes too their squib kicks and their surprise kicks. So as you see in the schedule, I have built in time for them to work on it. And since I'm on the field as a defensive line coach, I see if they're working or not. They know if they're not going to work, they get this lovely piece of equipment that has a tape in it, and they have to film practice. I also do something very unusual with my kickers and punters. They break down the film probably before me of their opponent. I let them time the snap, show the direction of the ball, where it went, and then also the hang time. They actually do some leg work for me in preparation for the opponents, so they know what we're up against in terms of actually trying to create a game plan. And they get excited because a lot of these players of mine also want to be coaches, and they feel a little bit more part of the team. Now we're going to take a look at the specialist period on Tuesday. During the season, the specialist period changes, as I said. If you notice, we're punting the ball from the middle of the field. 90% of the time, we are going to stay in the middle of the field because most of our opponents are what we call sky kicking teams and not directional. If they were a directional kicking team, we would take half of our reps for this drill to the right hash and then half to the left hash. What we do is a drill called pods. We will have an offensive unit, a punt team, simulate the blocks of the opponent. Are they a man protection scheme or are they a zone protection scheme? We will then have the returners, according to the return that we call, whether we have a middle return or a right alley or a left alley, in their minds execute that return. What we are going to do then is we're going to call a pod out, such as the gunners. The gunners would come down based upon that return, and our swatters need to block it according to the rules of that particular punt return setup. Once the gunners have gone, they clear out to the sidelines, a new returner comes up, the ball gets snapped again, and now the ends or the wings and the tackle go from the right and left side. Why did we do this? Because it teaches the players the proper body position that you saw in the circuit drills on how to create the tunnel for the punt return. Then we have the guards go, the interior people and the center. If you don't want to run your center down all the time, have an extra center there or a player who's going to replace the center in terms of running down the field to cover the kick. Each returner will probably get 3 cracks at it. Thus, they will experience either the gunners coming at them, the inside personnel coming at them, or the exterior wing and tackle. It works out great. We can also put 2 returners back there, and they can work on their you-me calls. While that's going on, at the other end of the field, our place kicker with our short snappers are working on the extra point, mostly on Tuesday. Some of my kickers always like to go a little longer and work on their field goal. Down there is just the center, a coach, the holder, and obviously the place kicker. A modification to the pods drill also could be that you can rush the punter with an extra guy so that they stay in the safe lane and punt the ball in their safe zone. Okay, let's move on. If you look at this slide, this kind of clarifies a little bit of what the pods drill look like. You notice there's a complete punt team ready to go. There is the complete return team, and what I have demonstrated here is a 10-up situation. That means we only have 1 guy back, and let's assume we're running a middle return. We would call gunners or swatters, gunner pods, and they would go down, and 1 and 10 would handle that. If we called the tight end and wing unit, or the tackle and wing unit, then we would then call 2 and 5, and 3 and 9 would be then part of that. And of course, then the interior people will go. You can see the other rules that we do in order to make the drill work. We're now moving on to Wednesday and the specialist period. If you notice, on the right-hand side, we have the OL and the DL. On Wednesday, during the season, they will be getting ready to follow, to come off there, what we call the pad, and come down to do their extra point protection, which is going to occur in the group combo period. I'll get to that in a second. But right now, our long snappers and punters, if you notice, have reversed the field, and our returners are now working with their backs to the goal line. We do this because we want to practice our 11-yard rule, our fair catch. Now, I know you think that that's a little unusual, the 11-yard rule, but we usually call it the 10-yard rule. My players will align at the 11 yards. They are allowed to take 1 step back to catch the football, to balance themselves out and make sure they can center on the ball. If they take 1 step back and they don't think that that ball is going to line up right where they are, because all returners like to take that step back to brace and to secure the catch, then the fair catch signal will go up and the ball will then be at the mercy of the bounce and if the team can down it. But to make the drill not a waste, we stack another returner in the end zone to catch the football in flight. We never want to waste an opportunity to catch a ball. So the main returner is at the 11. And of course, then the backup returner, who's just an extra player, is back there so we can catch the football and not waste a rep. Now, we also add the gunners and the swatters. If we have enough of them, 2 swatters will go, and of course, 2 gunners will go from the right and left side. If we only have a few players that day due to injury or class situations, then we'll only go with 1 gunner to the right and left. Again, that returner gets used to catching the ball under pressure. On the opposite side of the field, we have live kickoff going with our kickoff returners, and usually Wednesday, after a few reps of just catching basic kickoffs, then we actually work on tandem reverses, and I have a coach working on that. Keep in mind, reverses are part of our package. They are not a gadget at Montclair State. On the other end of the field, we are quite busy with our extra point unit. What we do here is we get our tight ends and wings involved, along with our exterior or outside block personnel. What we work on here is rushing the place kicker with our guys blocking and blending in our fakes. Because if you keep in mind, not only does your offensive have a chance to fake on an extra point, but your defenders need to learn how to defend that, and they need to know when to pull off and which ones will continue to apply pressure to the kicker. We do that every Wednesday. Keep in mind, the full team is not there until we go to our 25-minute segment, which is at the beginning for 10 minutes of that 25 segment. But we work on block technique, block protection, but we're really concerned, especially early in the year, that we have gotten all our fakes down, and that's a good time to do it. On the left-hand side, you notice we're back to our first and second line of kickoff return, securing the ball and handling various different kind of kicks. That is our Wednesday specialist period. On Thursday, you notice now the punters have moved to the opposite hash to work on their directional kicks to the left. You notice our kickoff return people have worked to their right. Again, we can be working on the 11-yard rule with our punt returners, but what we usually do also is do our north-south drill, where we have a returner bearing down on them directly from the beginning. The reason why we do it on Thursday is because we don't have the gunners coming. If you look opposite in the blue on the slide, you will notice that we do a drill called downing the football. Well, obviously now you understand why the gunners are not there, and the swatters, because they're involved in this drill along with any personnel that is on the wing punt team that is going to down the football. We have a coach flip the football. It can be in the air, it can bounce on the ground, and we actually practice us downing the football with multiple people going, with one guy who gets there first, making sure that their back is to the end line, keeping the ball in. They locate where their feet is, or sometimes if the ball is going to take an unusual hop, learning to bat it back in to the field of play without it going into the end zone, and then the other play is coming down to down the ball. In the middle of the field, on that same end of the field, we now will concentrate on block. Extra point and field goal block with the same unit. Will we throw in a fake? Yes, we will. 1 or 2. But in that 10-minute period of time, we are going to go after that punt situation. And again, if we need to and we have something special going on, our interior line once again will be practicing their their extra point and extra point and field goal block situations. Generally, the offensive protection has already been done on Wednesday, and that's probably all we need. Now, Thursday, I said we do an unusual thing. We run what we call a Thursday script. I pick out game conditions and the game plan that I'm going to use. And in this particular one, you notice we're going to do let's say a kickoff return, and it's going to be a Rambo. Okay, well, I'm going to make sure that I have my kickoff returns covered first against the look that we're going to get. And you notice it's like a game where we're going to move the ball up and down the field. I always start and finish with tight punt because that's the worst place to get a kick blocked or something to go wrong with that. And of course, a tight punt means that you're backed up inside your 5-yard line. We put the ball on the -1 and we go ahead. Once again, this is not a light drill. On Thursdays, we are in helmets and pads, and we expect people to block on that, score a touchdown at practice, or block a kick if you're on the look squad against our first unit. I also set up not only the yard lines, the hashes. I give the goal to remind myself no block kicks. Let's say on tight punt, I emphasize that to the players. My box coach on the sideline is going to reiterate that, no block kicks. And then, of course, I put down how many returners I want and then who is the punter. If you have multiple punters, you want to give them extra chances to punt, and everybody knows when it's their turn. Okay, kickers are unusual. They need to know a lot of stuff when you